Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy St. Patrick's Day. Hope that you're all having as good a day as you possibly can, considering the circumstances. But I'm here to drop another episode on the Jeffrey Epstein Show to help you get through it. Now, remember, there's over 300 episodes in the library, so if you're stuck on a lockdown or you're stuck on some sort of shelter-in-place situation, you're all set, right? If you haven't caught up on all of the podcasts, well, you're in business. You have something to do. And go ahead and, share that stuff with your friends as well if they're locked down and they're interested in this case, or if they're just interested in government corruption in general, because really that's what's at the heart of all of this, right? At the end of the day, this is about corruption and how these people, including Jeffrey Epstein, were able to do what they were able to do for so long. So if you have friends out there who are into true crime, government corruption, etc., make sure you're sharing this with them, especially right now, right? I'm going to have plenty of time on my hands, folks, so don't be surprised on some of these days if you see 3, 4, maybe even 5 episodes, because what else am I going to do? The whole city shut down pretty much, and you know what? Here we are. So I'm going to use this time productively, and I'm going to add to the catalog. I mean, why not, right? There's so much more of this story that needs to be told that we could sit here for days on end reading articles, and that's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna get through this, all of us together, like every other time we've ever been dealt a shitty hand here in this country. We're gonna just mob through it like usual. Americans are very pragmatic about things like this. After this initial panic wears off, the shock of what's going on, everybody's gonna settle in and things are gonna get moving in the right direction. But until then, we're going to be here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show, and we're going to be firing off podcasts because, you know what? Why not? Today, we have an article that just came out in The Sun about an hour ago. And the headline is, Jeffrey Epstein secretly bought a $500,000 bungalow in Queens just before his 2006 arrest for underage sex abuse. This article was written by Chris Spargo. Epstein finalized the purchase of the home located on the border of Queens and the town of Valley Stream just days after police signed a probable cause affidavit charging him and two of his assistants with multiple counts of unlawful sex acts with a minor. That's pretty interesting. 2 days after he was, days after the police signed a probable cause affidavit. So he already knew that he was getting hemmed up, right? Because of his inside sources, his inside people. And he goes off and he buys this bungalow. Pretty interesting considering the man's facing serious charges. Court records obtained by The Sun show that the property was registered under Lyn and Jojo LLC. This suggests that the home was not for Epstein himself, but rather two of his longtime employees who were also husband and wife. And we've seen these two employees. They're the Asian couple, and they're pictured with all sorts of people at Epstein's house, the Duchess of York, etc., etc. I mean, they posted a bunch of pictures with a bunch of famous people while they were working at Epstein's. Now, my question is this. How come these two haven't been brought in? How come these two haven't been put under the microscope? Again, everybody who was involved with Epstein and anybody that Epstein's buying houses for certainly has to fall under the umbrella of, somebody that needs to be looked into, right? Why is Epstein buying a house for these two employees, house managers or, whatever they were doing at his house? Why would he be purchasing them a property? Again, it's the same thing as with the girls that didn't rat on him, right? The core four. Oh, well, you keep your mouth shut and I'm going to take care of you financially. And we've seen that in this case so many times. We've seen Jeffrey Epstein swing around his big purse and use it as a weapon almost. And again, the question is, in this situation, in my opinion anyway, is why would Jeffrey Epstein buy these two a home? The 1,576 square foot property built in 1927 features 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a detached garage that sits on a 4,400 square foot lot. It was a deal purchased It was purchased in a deal spearheaded by Epstein's longtime lawyer, Darren Indyke, who crossed out his name on the property's deed and wrote in the LLC when he signed the purchasing document. Look, Darren Indyke has no business being anywhere near the estate as an executor. Somebody needs to step in and get rid of this guy. And the same goes for Khan as well. Both of these guys are neck deep in Jeffrey Epstein's transgressions. They can't be trusted. They can't be negotiated with. And they can't be expected to be arbiters of fairness when it comes to this case. So we need to definitely make sure that these guys aren't involved. Lyn and Jojo then lived in the home from 2006 through 2011, according to records, at which time Epstein would have completed both the incarceration and probation periods of his plea deal and returned to New York City. It is unclear why Epstein bought the property for the two, but neither Lyn or Jojo ever had any ownership in the home. It's obvious to me what's going on here. He bought this for them and let them live there rent-free, I'm sure, for all of these years to buy their silence, to make sure that they're quiet, to make sure they don't talk about what they saw at the house, to make sure they don't come out and say, well, yeah, this guy's a sick bastard. There's a bunch of little girls running around. That's what he's doing here. He's buying them off. Epstein also owned the couple's New York City residence in his brother Mark's apartment building in East 66th Street. So you mean to tell me that these two managers of Jeffrey Epstein's home, people that work for him, underlings, and we're talking big-time underlings, right, have enough money to live in an apartment building on East 66th Street? Okay, sure. With a building with units that cost $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, and up, you mean to tell me that these folks make enough money to live in Manhattan in one of these buildings, and they're able to afford that? Okay, well, how? That's my question. How are they able to afford that? Because that's big dough, folks. I'm sure all of you know about the crazy rent prices in New York, especially Manhattan. So you really think that these folks were able to afford that on the salary they were getting from, cleaning up Jeffrey Epstein's guests' plates? Nah, man. This was all part of the plan, all part of the scheme, all part of the benefit package if you help Jeffrey Epstein keep his enterprise running. Lyn and Jojo are the same couple who made waves when it was revealed they had posted photos with a number of Epstein's famous friends. Prince Andrew, his ex-wife Sarah Fergie Ferguson, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Chris Tucker were just a few of the famous faces that they snapped pictures with over the years. I forgot about that picture with Obama with these two. It raises the question, what was Obama doing? Why was he hanging out with these folks? The pair moved out of the property in 2011, according to public records, which is also when Jojo ended his employment with Epstein in New York. Shocking, huh? The employment ends. We worked out whatever deal we worked out. Now it's time for you to move on. You had a nice run, a nice 5-year run of living the high life without having to pay a single dollar. So then they moved on. It appears that 2 other Epstein employees then moved into the property, which was purchased just before the housing bubble burst. Epstein's name is not on any of the papers, and it is instead Indyke who signed all the documents and set up the LLC for the company. Again, folks, Indyke needs to be brought in and questioned. He should not be involved in the estate at this point. He is corrupt. He has his fingers deep in the pie, and he needs to be removed ASAP. Indyke also writes in the documents that his office is located in the Palace Hotel in New York City. It is by far the smallest of Epstein's properties, and one he never had to publicly claim as his own since Indyke did not list the name of his client. Again, all of these rules for these rich people, all of these rules for these so-called elite, they have all sorts of loopholes where they can just, duck, dive, dodge, and duck again, and not have to have their names on properties and still reap all of the rewards by not, and not having to pay any of the taxes and whatnot. It's just a joke. The whole entire system's a joke at this point. The inclusion of the property in a recent filing from the Virgin Islands Attorney General means that it could be up for grabs once the estate starts paying out Epstein's alleged survivors. Epstein's estate is being sued by close to 30 women, as well as the Virgin Islands, with the latter hoping to seize or force the sale of his 2 island properties and other holdings in the U.S. territory. Again, that's garbage. That language right there tells you that Denise George wants those islands for herself and not herself to be enriched, obviously, but for the Virgin Islands to reap the benefits of the sale of those islands. In the wake of the filing that initial complaint, the Deputy Attorney General for the territory, Carol Thomas Jacobs, filed court papers arguing that the only way to guarantee the estate maintain the cash damages the government is seeking would be to allow her to intervene. A.G. Jacobs argued that the will is filed in her jurisdiction, as well as the fact that the U.S. Virgin Islands is the site of many Epstein's alleged abuses of minors and court filings attained by the Sun. Folks, I'm not comfortable with these two prosecuting this case. They're not seasoned prosecutors. They're not seasoned investigators even. I mean, I respect what they've accomplished in their little tiny corner of the world, but this is much bigger than them. This has to be pursued by the SDNY. Under the framework of the fund, there is no obligation that the program administrator be subject to legal constraints imposed by probate court or the supervision or approval of this court, and provides no assurances that the government's substantial and legally protectable interest in the distribution of the estate's asset will be protected, reads the motion to intervene. It says it right there. It's crystal clear what the Virgin Islands is after here, folks, and it disgusts me. It really disgusts me, and I told you from the very beginning what Denise George's motivation was. I didn't have any inside information, but once again, my gut feeling in this case has been proven correct. Moreover, there is no ceiling or floor for funds to be paid to the victims, imperiling both the government's ability to ensure that its own claims are satisfied and to ensure that victims receive the compensation that which they are entitled. Don't say the government, say the Virgin Islands, okay? Say the Virgin Islands government. Don't try and make it with a broad brush and say it's the federal government going after this, because it's not. You haven't heard Mr. Berman come out and say that New York wants the money for the townhouse once it's sold, right? You haven't heard nobody talk about that. The only people who are talking about enriching themselves or enriching their state or property is the people from the Virgin Islands. And I find it disgusting considering they turned their heads for so long and let this abuse take place. Later in the motion, A.G. Jacobs stressed to the judge that the government does not seek to supplant funds that victims might receive through the Epstein Fund or otherwise, but is entitled to ensure its own legally enforceable interests in the estate are protected. No, you have no enforceable interest in the estate. Enough already. See, they try to preface it there and try and, soften the blow with their language. Oh, well, we don't want anything from the victims, but, well, you know what Eddard Stark says, right? Anything that comes before the word but is shit. She also demanded that the estate set aside funds for survivors who may be too afraid to come forward or are still dealing with trauma. I agree with that. That's actually a decent move. This was in response to the filing by the estate's executors that sought to require any survivors seeking compensation to file their claims by last Friday, after which the estate would not be responsible for paying out any lawsuits. What's more, the estate wants this all to play out in a court of law, not in a court of law, but rather arbitration. BS. Nope, court of law or bust. This is improper, impermissible, and deceptive, stated A.G. Jacobs in a filing attached to her motion, which argued this would re-victimize the women. She hopes that the argument will ring true to Judge Carolyn Herman Purcell, who will rule on the AG's request to intervene in the trust while also determining if the estate's request to have secret settlements is legal. I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's legal at all. But what do I know? I'm certainly not a judge. I'm certainly not a lawyer. But I think that if this judge has any sort of backbone, any sort of spine, that they're going to think the same way and, let these mofos know that this isn't going to fly. A.G. Jacobs could ultimately have control over the distribution of funds alongside Epstein's previously selected executors, lawyer Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. Not one of those people do I trust. So how about we get somebody in there that is a fair outside source, right? Somebody who isn't tied to this case, somebody who isn't trying to get some money, somebody who isn't trying to protect the money. Plenty of people out there that they could hire to do that job. What are they waiting for? Epstein signed a last will and testament just 2 days before taking his own life. In the document, which was filed in the Virgin Islands, Epstein put his net worth at over $577 million. That amount is almost $20 million more than he told a federal judge he was worth in a court filing back in July. And we know that it's even more than that, somewhere around $631 million now. He listed his brother Mark as his lone heir, while Indike and Khan were designated executors alongside Boris Nikolic. Nikolic would later recuse himself from that position. Epstein put all of his holdings in a trust that he called the 1953 Trust, presumably after the year of his birth. He broke down his personal property into 12 categories. Epstein's last will and testament: cash, $56,547,773. Fixed income investments, $14,304,679. Equities, $112,679 and $112,679,138. Aviation assets, automobiles, boats, $18,551,700. Hedge funds, private equity investments, $194,986,301. New York City mansion, $55,931,000. New Mexico property, Zorro Ranch, $17,246,208. Paris apartment, $8,672,823. Palm Beach mansion, $12,380,209. Great St. James, U.S. Virgin Island, $22,498,600. Little St. James, Red Hook, $63,874,223. Fine arts, antiques, and other property to be determined. The value of the estate will likely surpass $600 million once Epstein's other assets are figured into the equation. And like I said, we're a little ahead of the game there. We're talking about roughly $631 million at this point. So, folks, again, what we see in this story is Epstein using his money to provide a place for these people to live, and I'm sure they were on some sort of retainer where they were being paid a lot of money to keep their mouths shut. And we saw it last night in our episode 2 of our Core 4 series with Sarah Kellen Vickers and Nadia Marcinkova living in the same building as these two. In $2 million apartments they were living in. It doesn't go into how much the apartments they were living in were worth in this article, but I'm sure that these two were living in a pretty nice place inside of this building. There's a lot more here, folks. We have to keep digging. We have to keep digging. These people that worked for Epstein know a lot more than they've come forward and said, and they need to be questioned. If they need to be subpoenaed, then so be it. If they won't talk of their own free will, then the full power of the federal government must be used to compel them to talk about what they know in this case. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. Also, if you'd like to find me on Twitter, you can do that at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, I will be back later on with our usual daily drop. Have a great day, everybody, and happy St. Patrick's Day.